seen it.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. On the radio, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com, you can find archived episodes where I talk about all areas of the law. Last week, I talked about immigration law. I talked about the San Antonio Marvel Project. Talk about business law, estate planning law, elder law, trusts, probate. Sometimes I talk about criminal defense. I have attorney guests from the area where I interview them about specific issues. If you have an interest in learning about a specific law or legal issue, email me at host@talklawradio.com or comment on Facebook, X, or YouTube. Today I'm talking about the Supreme Court case, United States versus Skermeti. It was a case to evaluate whether a Tennessee law violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment by saying that doctors were prohibited from prescribing puberty blockers and hormones for minors to treat certain conditions. But so, is that an important issue in your life? Do you know those who seek that treatment? It's been in the news a lot recently, the past couple of years anyway. I never heard about gender dysphoria until President Biden was elected. But this Supreme Court case is important because there's a handful of states, 14 states or 16 states that are regulating whether doctors can prescribe puberty blockers and hormones for minors. So the interesting thing about this case is that there was a previous Supreme Court case that had ruled that transgender identity was something like something that could be protected like sex discrimination. And so the people that wanted to block this case thought that the Supreme Court would rule in the same manner. But I'll cut to the chase and make the long story short and let you know that the Supreme Court says that there are lots of United States laws, lots of state laws that discriminate based on age. You know, you have to be age 18 to do certain things. You have to be age 21 to do certain things. And so they said that this Tennessee law that prohibited doctors from prescribing puberty blockers and hormones to minors was not discriminating on the basis of gender or sex, but it was discriminating based on age. I wanted to talk about gender dysphoria a little bit because I had to get some better understanding on it myself. So there's a mental health diagnosis book called the DSM version 5 that says gender dysphoria is the diagnostic term used to describe the distress a person experiences due to a mismatch between their gender identity and their assigned sex. It replaces the term gender identity disorder from the DSM-4. The diagnosis requires a significant incongruence between experienced or expressed gender and assigned sex and associated distress or impairment in functioning. There's some important terms here that we should define. Gender dysphoria, again, is a concept designated in the DSM-5 as clinically significant distress or impairment related to gender incongruence, which may include desire to change primary and or secondary sex characteristics. Not all transgender or gender-diverse people experience gender dysphoria. Gender expression is the outward manifestation of a person's gender, which may or may not reflect their inner gender identity based on traditional expectations. Gender expression incorporates how a person carries themselves, their dress, accessories, mannerisms, grooming, voice, speech patterns, and physical characteristics. Probably wondering why Todd Marquardt on Talk Law Radio is talking about gender identity and gender dysphoria. It's because the mission of Talk Law Radio is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. And the Supreme Court decision describes, or it translates what the law means for us. And so in this case, the question was whether or not a Tennessee law that prohibits doctors from prescribing puberty blockers and hormones to minors violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So the Supreme Court was further explaining what the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment covers. And it said that states are allowed to make laws that are rational for the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. And so this is a health law to regulate how physicians prescribe medicines and treatments to minors. And so what do you think? Do you think that the state should regulate something like that? Do you think doctors should be able to do whatever they want? And I'm going to get into this a little bit later. Why is gender identity such a big idea now? I don't remember hearing about this when I was growing up. I don't remember any kids in my class wanting to be a different gender. Do you? If you have an opinion about this, comment on my Facebook page, Talk Law Radio, or go to YouTube, subscribe to that channel, Talk Law Radio, and post a comment there. You can also email me privately at host@talklawradio.com. That's HOST @talklawradio.com. I'm just interested in getting some feedback on this I want to find out what y'all think about it. And so I was talking about that Supreme Court case, and I wanted to get some better understanding on what this mental disorder is and how is it treated. So I was going through some definitions, and I'll continue that. Gender identity is a person's inner sense of being a girl, a woman, a boy, a man, some combination of both, or something else, including having no gender at all. This may or may not correspond to one's sex assigned at birth. You may have heard the term non-binary. That means individuals whose gender identity is neither girl, woman, nor boy, man. We also need to define sex or gender assigned at birth. Traditional designation of a person as female, male, or intersex based on anatomy, that is, external genitalia and or internal reproductive organs, and or other biological factors like sex chromosomes. Sex and gender are often used interchangeably, but they are really different. It's best to distinguish between sex, gender, identity, and gender expression to avoid making assumptions about a person regarding one of these characteristics based on knowledge of the others. This is sometimes abbreviated as assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth. And this is different than sexual orientation, which describes the types of individuals toward whom a person has emotional, physical, or romantic attraction. And then there's the word transgender, an umbrella term describing individuals whose gender identity does not align in a traditional sense with the gender they were assigned at birth. It may also be used to refer to a person whose gender identity is binary and not traditionally associated with that assigned at birth. So I'm talking about the Supreme Court case that ruled that the Tennessee law was not unconstitutional. So the Tennessee law stands, which prohibits doctors from prescribing puberty blockers and hormones to minors. So there's also a Texas law about this. It was couple of years ago. It started as Senate Bill 14, and it's now in the Health and Safety Code, which has a similar law. It's a similar law to the one in Tennessee. So I'm talking about this because the Supreme Court case said that Tennessee law made it. Well, no, I'm talking about there was a Texas Supreme Court case. Okay, so the Texas Supreme Court also evaluated the Texas law, and the Texas Supreme Court said the legislature made a permissible, rational policy choice to limit the types of available medical procedures for children, particularly in light of the relative nascency of both gender dysphoria and its various modes of treatment, and the legislature's express constitutional authority to regulate the practice of medicine. So the key provisions of Senate Bill 14 are that it prohibits healthcare professionals from providing puberty blockers, hormone therapies, and gender transition surgeries to minors in Texas. It also restricts public funds, including Medicaid and Children's Health Insurance Program, to pay for those treatments. While banning these treatments, the law includes a provision for minors already undergoing treatment as of 2014. No, maybe it's 2024, to wean off the medications in a medically appropriate manner. And the Texas Attorney General's office is tasked with enforcing the law and investigating potential violations, including those by out-of-state providers. So do you think that this is a protection for children, or do you think that this could lead to children not getting the treatment that they want? One, I think it's the Texas law that says, no, it's the DSM that says you could be diagnosed with gender dysphoria if you're experiencing symptoms for 6 months. Well, I don't know about you, but in my experience, kids have phases that they go in and out of, and just because they're experiencing mental health trouble for a period of time doesn't mean that they will be free from that at some point. They might go see a therapist. They might do some talk therapy. They might just change their mind. I don't know if this is a permanent disorder that you never change out of. What do you think? Email me at host@talklawradio.com. And by the way, I'm not trying to be insensitive about this. I'm just trying to talk about the law and find out what you think. So don't get mad at me for talking about it. You know, I realize there's different viewpoints about this. I realize that the people that do suffer from feeling like that they're the wrong gender than the one assigned at birth really feel deeply about their concerns and their discomfort about it. So I'm not trying to minimize that. I'm just trying to talk about what the law is on it and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And so we know in Tennessee and in Texas, doctors are not allowed to give puberty blockers or hormones to children. So that's interesting, isn't it? Okay, I was wondering about how did we get to this point? How did we just start hearing about gender changes more so now than we did 25 or 50 years ago? And so I asked Grok, which is the AI tool app through X, formerly known as Twitter. And what it does is it searches those X posts to find what other people say. So it's a faster way of reading through X. You know, I didn't want to scroll through X for hours and hours reading all of the comments, because some of the comments are not reasonable or logical. They're just based on emotion, and I don't think I don't learn anything from those. I like it when somebody makes a post that explains why they feel what they do. And so Grok says that the apparent increase in gender dysphoria prevalence, particularly among adolescents, is likely due to a combination of social, cultural, and medical factors, though exact causes remain unclear and data is limited. One of the arguments is that we hear more about it now than ever is because of increased awareness and social acceptance. You know, social media, everybody has the ability to just post how they feel. It's like a newspaper every second. In the old days, I would imagine that news that got printed in the newspaper was heavily vetted. They had to decide what is good news to put in the newspaper. And I don't mean good news versus bad news. I mean news that people are going to want to read. So there's greater visibility of transgender identities through media. Education and advocacy has reduced the stigma, allowing more individuals to openly express gender dysphoria or identify as transgender. Younger generations especially feel safer exploring and articulating their gender identity in environments that are more accepting than in past decades. For example, surveys indicate that about 1.2 to 2% of high school-aged teens now identify as transgender, a significant rise from earlier estimates. This suggests a cultural shift, enable more people to recognize and report gender dysphoria. Here's another reason that we might be hearing about it more. The changes in diagnostic frameworks, such as the DSM-5's shift from gender identity disorder to gender dysphoria, have broadened the criteria to include a wider range of gender incongruence experiences. Improved access to gender identity services and better training among healthcare providers also mean more cases are identified and recorded. For instance, referrals to gender dysphoria clinics in Western countries have risen significantly over the past decade, with England reporting around 8,000 adult referrals in 2018 and 2019. Here's another reason that we might be hearing about gender dysphoria more. There's a social contagion hypothesis. Some researchers and commentators propose that social influences, particularly among adolescents, contribute to the rise. Some teens, especially those assigned female at birth, may identify as transgender due to peer influence or social media exposure. A 2018 study by Lisa Littman noted that 82.8% of surveyed parents reported their child's gender dysphoria emerged suddenly during puberty, often alongside peers identifying as transgender, or heavy social media use. Now, this isn't proven or anything, it's just a hypothesis, so you can take that with a grain of salt. Some emerging research points to potential biological contributors, such as in utero exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, which may influence gender development. These chemicals can alter fetal testosterone levels, potentially increasing risk for gender dysphoria and related conditions like autism spectrum disorder, which shows higher prevalence among gender dysphoric youth. Additionally, older parental age, particularly paternal, has been suggested as a factor, though evidence is preliminary. Another reason we might be hearing about it more, I know there's a lot of reasons here, but just bear with me, because we're learning. We're trying to figure out what's going on here. And it's all related to the law, because God started with one law: don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then he gave Moses the 10 Commandments. And now we have municipal, state, and federal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws that impact you without you knowing it. And since we're talking about some laws that prohibit doctors from doing certain things, you know that the state can regulate the practice of medicine. It's a state-by-state type of profession. And so other states are probably going to allow doctors to keep doing this. And so does that mean that people are going to be moving from state to state, or are they going to just travel, go on vacation to another state so that they can get their child some puberty blockers? I don't know. But here's another reason that we're hearing about this more. It's often gender dysphoria is often combined with other mental health issues like depression or anxiety, or neurodevelopmental conditions like autism. Historical data shows transgender identities have always existed, but social disapproval often suppressed open expression. So that could be. It sounds logical. So that's interesting, right? I thought that we should talk about what it is so that we can understand what the law is. So the United States Supreme Court case that I've been talking about is United States versus Skermeti. And in the opinion, the court said, on its face, this Tennessee law incorporates two classifications, one based on age, allowing certain medical treatments for adults but not minors, and another based on medical use, permitting puberty blockers and hormones for minors to treat certain conditions, but not to treat gender dysphoria, gender identity disorder, or gender incongruence. The classifications are based on age or medical use, are subject only to rational basis. That the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause, requires a higher degree of scrutiny if it's declared to be a protected class like sex or religion or age, but not in this case. The plaintiffs argue that there should be heightened scrutiny because it relies on sex-based classifications, but the court said neither of those classifications turns on sex. Rather, the law prohibits healthcare providers from administering puberty blockers or hormones to minors for certain medical uses, regardless of a minor's sex. So, thank you for listening to Talk Law Radio today. Tune in on Saturday mornings if you want to hear about other laws. I try and mix up the episodes on Saturdays and Sundays. And you can always go to YouTube to see all of my content, and you can do me a big favor and subscribe to that channel. Also, join my friends in letting me know how you feel about these laws and how it might impact you. Thanks again. I'm Todd Marquardt on Talk Law Radio. I'll talk to you later.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.